Hello ACU business students. Welcome back to week 12 of Business and Accounting 222. This week we're finishing up chapter 15 where we're going to be looking at determining the cash flow from financing activities. Last week we looked at cash flow from operating cash standpoint and then the investing standpoint, investing activities. We're going to finish that up with the financing activities, and then we're going to do a deep dive this week into understanding the cash flow statement itself, like how does it really help a business run. And I think this is probably the most beneficial part of the discussion will be this week. So as a reminder, last week we looked at step 1, determining cash flows from operating activities. We looked at cash flows from investing. So we're finishing up the discussion this week on financing activities and analyzing the statement itself. So from a financing perspective, the financing activities that impact the cash flow statement, remember that cash flows from finance activities is similar to the cash flows for investing, but it's kind of the other side. So accounts, when we talk about financing activities, those are activities that would bring cash into the organization. Maybe you had to borrow money, maybe you had to increase your credit line, maybe you pulled back in some equity from stockholders and that sort of thing. All those relate to financing activities related to the cash flow. And just as a reminder, this is what a cash flow statement looks like. There's this cash flow section on cash flows from operating activities, cash flows from investing activities, and then what you're studying this week is cash flows from the financing activities. All that to give you a final like cash end of year balance, or end of period I should say, maybe not end of year. There is a connection, just in case you haven't figured it out yet from the text, between the statement of cash flows and the balance sheet itself. So if you look on the balance sheet, you'll find your cash line underneath your current assets, and it should be feeding and be the same as your statement of cash flows be the same as cash over on your statement of cash flows for that same time period. So there's definitely a connection between balance sheet and cash flows, statement of cash flows. We want to look at some of these ratios that you're going to be studying this week, all around like how well, or efficient is the word that's used here, how efficient does the company or a business use its cash or generate its cash. Kind of think of your business as a machine for making cash, all right? How well do you do that? There's 4 different yields: cash flow yield, cash flows to sales, and again, cash flows to assets. Then there's this free cash flow ratio as well. Let's look at the cash flow ratios from a 20,000 foot view. These are all around the operating activities, so not financing and not investing activities on the cash flow, all around the operating activities section of the cash flow statement. The cash flow yield ratio is a ratio of net cash flows from operating activities compared to net income off your income statement. So it kind of gives you an idea whether a company is generating sufficient cash flow in relation to its net income or its profitability, if you want to think about it like that. This next section, this next slide shows Amazon's how much cash they generated from their net income. So in this case, you can see it. The math is pretty simple. For every $1 of net income, they generated $6.19 worth of cash. It seems pretty amazing to me. Put $1 in, get 6 of them out. Seems like a pretty good deal. Let's look at cash flow to sales. It's the ratio of net cash flows from operating activities compared to net sales, off the income statement. So it answers the question, how much operating cash did each $1 of sales or revenue generate? In this case, in the case for Amazon, it's 8.1%. So the other way to read that is, for every $1 of net income, the business generated. Sorry about that. For every $1 of sales generated at Amazon in this case, it generated about 8 cents worth of cash. Doesn't sound like a lot unless you're talking billions of dollars like you are at Amazon. And then what about this cash flow to assets? It's the ratio of net cash from operating activities compared to average total assets. And you can see the formulation there. But the other way to read that is for every $1 of assets, Amazon generated about 18 cents. They have billions in dollars of assets, so they generate quite a bit of cash. By any measure, they're generating cash. So those are a quick look at the ratios. This free cash flow ratio gives you, it's the amount of cash that remains after you back out commitments that you made. And so positive cash flow is good. It means you got money left over. You can either save it, you can reduce debt, you can expand, you can put it away for a rainy day. One automotive company did this, Ford Motor Company, and they did it faithfully. And then back in 2008, when the recession hit, when everybody else had to go to the government for a loan, Ford did not. They had their own cash reserves. They survived. They did it because they put away money from their free cash flow operation. And then negative cash flow, you can't survive long that way. You might get by for a while, a few periods, but eventually it'll catch up to you. You'll borrow, and then you're done. You have to pay back that money, and you won't have the money to do it. So asking the right questions about statement on cash flows, some quick look at them. When you look at the cash flow, net income, what are the primary reasons the company's cash flow are different from one period to the next? Dig into the numbers on the cash flow statement. It gives you a great picture of what's going on. In terms of financing activities, how did the company manage its financing activities throughout the year? Did you have to borrow more money, or could you pay down some of the debt and borrow less? Look at the trends of all the numbers. They're going to tell you kind of what's going on under the hood of the car, so to speak. And then some ethical considerations to think about. Because of the emphasis on cash flow, cash is king, you got to have it. There is an incentive sometimes to kind of like hide a little bit to make it look better than it is. Think about those cash flow ratios for a moment. They're all related to operating activities. So imagine by reclassifying some operating expense as an investment, you might be able, or financing activities, you might be able to hide something there. So don't do it. All right, listen, look me up if you have questions this week, and hope you guys are doing well. We're coming into the last, got about 6 more weeks to go or so. 5 more weeks maybe, actually. So anyways, you're doing great. Hang in there. Talk to you later.